Hey, and a very warm welcome to the Into the LightWeb podcast with me, your hostess, Joanna Hunter, metaphysical teacher, spiritual life and business coach, published author, and the high priestess of the LightWeb, a spiritual technology that will change your life. This is the place to be to talk everything under the LightWeb, from consciousness, relationships, to money, to spiritual business, and everything in between. Hey, and welcome to the Into the LightWeb podcast with me, your hostess, Joanna Hunter. And I have a really fun episode for you today on my $1 Million Lab series. So it's been 13 weeks since we have started the experiment, this being week 14. So I thought we'd had such wonderful guests on in the first quarter of this year that I thought it would be absolutely awesome to go through and recap some of those amazing guests that we have had. So I'm just going to recount all the different episodes that we've had, what some of my biggest takeaways were from the episodes that we had. So we kicked off this podcast with the gorgeous money mentor, Denise Duffield Thomas. So she's one of my money mentors. And one of the biggest takeaways from that conversation was celebrating the small wins as if they are big wins. So let's cue that clip just now. So let's have a little dive into these questions. So Fiona Morris asks, how did you celebrate when you first reached your first million? Do you remember?
Okay, so what you're asking is not the question. So it's really not, because I've been asked this so many times. And a friend of mine was like, did you cry? Gratitude? And I was like, actually, no, because I celebrated the first $225 that I made in my first month full-time in my business as if I was already a millionaire. And I really mean that. Like, I went to the fanciest restaurant in town because I did like a workshop and I made money out of it because I had nice hair, because I was like, I'll get my hair done for this workshop. And I went to the fanciest restaurant in town and I ordered a glass of champagne, and then I had to check my bank account on my phone. Have you ever done that, where you're like, how much money have I got in my account, to see if I could order some fries? And so I ordered some poutine. I'd never had that before. And I sat there and I toasted myself and I said, more of this, universe. More of this.
That. I love
that. And so honestly, the $1 million was not even the thing, because I knew, I was like, if I can make $225, I can do it again. I can do it again. I can do it again. And that doesn't mean it was smooth sailing. Like, I definitely hit plateaus, but I honestly don't even remember what I made of it. I don't, because I was just like, I'm on my way. And
I think that's really important, because a lot of people, and it's something that I say to my crowd quite often, is that every increment is as important as the next increment. And then I have another saying, which I love, which is, if you can make $1 on the internet, you can make $100,000 on the internet. And if you can make $100,000 on the internet, you can make $1 million on the internet. And I have no doubt that that's the way it goes, because it's just more.
It's just more. And this is why I say in boot camp too, like, let's just talk about our numbers, because a bigger number doesn't make you a better person. A smaller number doesn't make you a smaller person. There's no hierarchy here, because we know that it's the same work. It's the same work. And I actually like want people to celebrate the smaller numbers even more, because that's the cog turning. You know, that's when you're doing all the work and not necessarily seeing the result yet, but it's coming. And so that's why I always push back on that question, not because it's not a good question. It is. It's just that we've been conditioned to think that you're only allowed to celebrate when you've made it. And that's not true. And even when people say, oh, I don't even want to tell you my goal, it's not as good as yours. And I'm going, not at all. The energy is the same. The only difference is just maybe an extra zero. Energy is exactly the same. And that's why people come back again and again to do the boot camp work, no matter how much money they're making, because it's the same work. It's the same work. And honestly, I can tell you myself, the same mindset issues I had making that first bit of money is the same mindset issues I have now, doubling or tripling my income. And it's, for me, personal for everyone. For me, it's like, they won't think I'm humble and down to earth, and they won't like me if I make more money. I've had that forever, and so so I have to work on the same stuff all the time. And and everyone's got to find what their lesson is, which is what we do in boot camp, right? So I love that question, Fiona, and thank you for asking it. And I hope you're celebrating today how much money, if you've made $1, celebrate, as Joanna says.
Absolutely. They're just, one of the things I love saying is like the difference between a millionaire can be just $1. Like with your ability to actually call yourself a millionaire, like it can literally be $1. And then you're starting to see how serious every increment is, in that it can actually create be the difference between the definition of something, which is really cool. In episode 2, we saw Laura Michelle Powers, and she shared with us something that I really, really enjoyed, and it was paying attention to how your energy feels in your body and trusting it. And Laura Michelle Powers was our expert for intuition, and I'm so excited to share this clip with you on where she talks about that process of really going into your body. So let's have a look at that.
Yeah, I think you brought up the first thing, which is really paying attention to the physical and our bodies specifically. Like our bodies are telling us things all the time, but most people are not listening to their bodies either on an intuitive level or even in terms of like health, for example, whatever our bodies are telling us in terms of what's happening with our health, diet, etc. So just really learning to pay attention. And even if you don't understand why something is going on in your body, why you're having that intuitive feeling or response, just learning to trust it. And the other piece is learning to kind of check in with it and see if you can develop more information. Because sometimes when you sit with something, you can sort of ask the question. Like I feel like psychic work is really, it's a conversation. It's a psychic conversation instead of a physical conversation. Most people don't realize they don't realize they're getting something. And I'm like, you can ask a question, you can ask for clarification, you can ask for more details. So even if it's just something on a body level, but paying attention to your body, how do things feel in your body, digging in to see if you can get more details on why things are feeling a certain way. And if you even want to just really dig on just to the body language piece, there's a book that I'd recommend for people. It's fascinating. It's called What Every Body is Saying. And it's written by a guy who has worked primarily with law enforcement and the FBI. And he analyzes like body language and facial expression and things like that. And a lot of people, as I got into this, they started to think that maybe I was a mentalist. So if you don't know what a mentalist is someone who is a very keen observer. Now, when I do my readings, I often will close my eyes at least part of the time so that I can see better psychically because I'm a clairvoyant. So like then I'm not looking at the physical. In fact, I do a lot of my readings over the phone where I'm like not even seeing the person physically at all. But I thought that was really interesting. I wanted to learn more about that. Like, how does mentalism work? So basically, it's people that just are these keen observers. The fascinating thing is I was reading that book, and there are things in the book that they describe, like, when you're like someone, when you like their energy, you want to connect with them, you basically kind of point your body and specifically your feet at that person. And if you don't like that person, you point your feet away. It's a very unconscious thing. Most people aren't aware that they're doing this. So I read this book and started to learn all these different things. And then when I was kind of noticing and observing my own body language, I started to realize that there were certain people that I kind of didn't like energetically, but it wasn't a conscious thing. And I would look at my feet and I'd be like, oh my gosh, my feet are pointed away. So that's an example of how strong it is. And just learning about that, like things like that, and then just really paying attention to how you're feeling in your body emotionally, I think is really, really powerful, as well as physical sensations.
Our third guest on our podcast was the gorgeous Bushra Azhar, and there was so many gems in this podcast episode. But one of the things that I really, really admire by Bushra, having followed her meteoric rise and absolute domination of the persuasion industry, was really how Bushra always is experimenting, trying new ideas, letting go of what doesn't work. And I think that's such an important lesson in this journey, especially for the $1 million experiment. So I'm super excited to share this little snippet from Bushra's interview, and I hope that you really enjoy it. It gives you lots of confidence in starting to experiment and try new things, because I think as adults, we lose that somehow. But tell us a little bit more about like experimentation in your business. And I see you experimenting all the time, and it's great. Like, I love that.
Yeah, I love it. So I love what you said on the whole, because I don't think I've ever kind of considered my business in this context. I mean, I've talked about the fact that I started as an experiment, but you're right. When you're looking at anything as an experiment, not only are you giving yourself a limit, so so it also doesn't allow you to procrastinate as much, because it is a race against the clock, but in a good way. And the other thing that I love about the experiment angle is that if something isn't working, you're not supposed to follow through with it. You can actually change it. Like they say, if something isn't working, just move. You're not a tree. I mean, if that's the beauty of an experiment, and that's really what happened. I remember someone asked me once, is like, how did you grow your list? And I was like, think of any list building activity, literally any list building activity out there, and I've done it. I mean, I can literally tell you right now, this one works, this one doesn't, this one works, this one doesn't. And I still am, I'm on 2,500 email lists. 2,500 email lists. And most people would just, you just get on an email list and you forget about it. I literally used to open the emails. I used to look at things that they say they are working. I used to look at things that people claim were working, and I would actually try it on to see if it worked or not. Because that's really, I feel, the biggest problem with the online business space is that a lot of people are literally spouting bullshit. They're just saying things that they're apparently working, but they're not. And no one is calling them out because no one is testing those ideas. So I actually did all of that. And because I was hell-bent on not spending any money on my business unless I knew it was going to come back to me, I was like super thrifty. I actually tried everything just to make sure that I can actually legitimately say, okay, this works, this doesn't work. And even now, every book I read, if there is a strategy in there, something that looks interesting to me, any video I watch, I try it out. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But you always learn. I mean, there is no situation where you don't walk away from that experiment without the learning. So I love the angle of experimentation that you're doing, because I think that's really what more people should do. Too many people are following a cut and dried formula. They're not experimenting enough. They're not taking enough risks. They're not trying out new things. And I think that's such a huge loss.
My next clip is with Natasha Bray. So she is one of my online friends, and I have seen her business grow and pivot and change into what it is now, which is this amazing business that changes and transforms women's lives. So in this episode, Natasha shared with us a really cool tip. And I think that this is a scary tip, but it's such a necessary tip as well. And her tip was outsourcing before you're ready. So really, sometimes being willing to maybe take a little cut in pay, a little short-term sacrifice for a longer-term gain. So I love this tip because it is so important in your business. Now, let's have a look at Natasha's clip. Cleo Callahan has asked this question. This is for entrepreneurs with families. How did they balance the day-to-day grind of home life, which is sometimes more of a duty than a passion, she says, and carrying out their vision for their business and pushing through to get what they wanted or where they are today? So that is her question. We'll start off with a big question.
I know. Yeah. So for me, it's getting over this belief that you have to do everything yourself, and outsourcing as much as possible, not always in the business sense, but at home too.
Yes.
When my grandparents looked after my child, that was work time. They were on my team. I wasn't paying them to do that, but they were there to help out while I was in those earlier stages of building my business. He went to crash 2 half days a week. I accepted benefits. I was on benefits at that time whilst I was growing my business. Like, as someone who'd always worked, I did feel a little bit like, part of me was like, I don't want to do this, but also I need to do this right now.
Yeah.
Because ultimately it's going to help me build a business where I'll be paying a lot more back into the community as a result.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like getting over I think, this belief that we feel that we have to do it all ourselves and that we have to struggle to do it. What I've learned in this journey is that a lot more success comes from a place of love than from struggle.
Oh, I love that. I love that. And I also want to add in what you're saying there as well about outsourcing. Get yourself a cleaner. You know,
my God, yeah.
Oh my God, isn't it?
It seems like such a little thing, but I had my cleaner start and I could only afford her once every 2 weeks when she first started. And I was pregnant with Jensen at the time. He's 4 now. And probably in the last few months, like I kept upgrading it. Then she came every week when I could afford her a bit more. And then I had someone come twice a week. And now I have a housekeeper. So like she's been upgraded from a cleaner to a housekeeper. I've got a housekeeper who comes 3 times a week now. But it all started off starting where you are and outsourcing before you're ready. Because part of the imposter in us believes that we have to be superwoman. We have to be able to have the house spotless, dinner on the table at a certain time, the kids looking perfect, and try and build a successful business at the same time. No one can do that.
My next guest was the gorgeous Kimra Luna, and Kimra Luna gave me so much in the early days of my business. I saw this wonderful little blue-haired lady on the internet, and I remember thinking, oh my goodness, if she can do this, I can do this. And Kimra shared with us a really, really important tip and something that I definitely practice a lot in my business, which is keeping things easy for yourself and not overcomplicating things. I think so many of us think that making more money or, it requires doing more. It really doesn't. We can keep it easy. We can keep it simple. So here is Kimra's clip.
Yeah, because making slides, it takes me a lot of energy. And so as a mom who had 2 little kids running around, and I had just found out I was pregnant with my 3rd, I just did everything the easiest way I could do it. Like everyone else had like proper slides and everything had like pretty branding. I hadn't even hired a branding person at this point. And I was just, okay, I'm just going to share it on an Evernote and then I could give everyone the link, and then they could just put in more notes while I'm talking if they want to. And I still do that. I actually do it with Google Docs. I just had some master classes. I did like a 5-part masterclass series, and all of the things I just like, oh, here's the Google Doc. And everyone's like, oh my gosh, thank you for the Google Doc. I was just like, oh, like I've been doing that for like 7 years, like that's just the way I am. And it's
to make it easy. I mean, like, I think we overcomplicate things. I think we think that we need all the bells, we need all the whistles, we need the perfect branding, we need all the things. But actually, one of the things that's always struck me with you is that the most important thing, the star of the show for me when I've been in your audience, has always been the information that you've shared, instead of always like, yes, I've been in your course and things like that, and there's been some really pretty branding there, right? That was outstanding. But also as well, the fact that you're willing to, because let's face it, that's the most important bit, isn't it? The information. And I think we can all get sucked into this whole idea that it's got to be perfect and it's got to be and you've got to have the oh my God, if you don't have a slide deck or if you don't like this, and we put all this pressure on ourselves. But actually, you can start with very little and still make money online, which is how I started, following your example. My next guest was the gorgeous Helen Pritchard, and she shared with us it was such an incredible interview, this interview. It was such a raw and honest interview, and I really appreciated the conversation that I had with Helen. So Helen shared so many good nuggets that actually it's so worth just to go back over the episode just for all the nuggets that were in there. But one of the really, really cool nuggets that I really appreciated from this interview was you can't get to $1 million with $100,000 mindset. You need to go through an uncomfortable process of growing and stretching first. And I think this is one of the things that blocks a lot of people, is that understanding that you cannot be who you are right now and have a different future, have a different thing. You have to be willing to change and transform for that. And that doesn't mean that you have to fundamentally change as a person, but you have to be willing for something to change. Otherwise, nothing's going to change. And I think I really appreciated this tip because it's so true. Every single stage of my business, my mindset has massively, massively changed and upgraded. And I think Helen really encapsulates that in this clip. One of the things that I discovered in my growth in my business over my lifetime, really, as an entrepreneur of 22 years, is that it's okay. Like, I think one of the things that's really important, and I kind of lay my hands over my heart on this one, is like, it is okay to outgrow people. Yeah. It is okay to outgrow them. And it doesn't mean that those people are terrible, awful people. And it doesn't mean that you're a terrible, awful person for outgrowing them. And like, it's completely okay to outgrow them and to like your paths to diverge.
Yeah.
And like that. But I think one of the things that I've been experiencing as I've been elevating and growing is like a weird pain that I get in my chest because I'm so empathic at the energy. And sometimes I see people and I see their behavior and I think I understand it is actually that piece of behavior that is blocking the success that they desire so much.
Yeah.
Like if those people could have just celebrated you in that moment, no holds barred, like, oh my God, Helen, that is amazing. And if they had turned up in those vibes, they would have attracted the success that they wanted for themselves so much easier. And I see that kind of vibe again and again, and it hurts me because I'm now there is no doubt in my mind that the success is about celebration and focus on what it is that's good. Yeah. And it's not just on what's good in your life, it's what's good in everybody's life. Like when I see other entrepreneurs, I make a point, if they've just nailed, like if they're going mental because they've just had their first, $1,000, like I'm celebrating like it's $1 million. I'm like, well done, this is great. It's so important because whatever you focus on is what you attract in. So if your vibes are focusing on somebody who's done well, but you're like, well, it wasn't that well, guess what? You're attracting in that result for yourself, not the 250K sales result. You're attracting in not that well. That's what it is, It is.
You can't if you hate success, you'll keep it from you. If you hate on other people's success, you'll never have it because you're putting out the vibes that you don't want it. If you can't celebrate it for other people, like why would the universe gift it to you?
Exactly. This segues really beautifully into like mindset and intuition. How important has mindset and intuition been in your journey?
Huge. What I realized was, from a mindset point of view, you can't get to £1 million with a 100K mindset. You've got to grow and you've got to stretch. And you know what growing and stretching is? A little bit painful. You have to dissect. So things that got you there won't get you there. So you have to go, I call it like the evolution of Helen, like the evolution of me. And that's one of the things around not getting on like arguments anymore because it's not conducive to running a multi-million-pound business. No. You wouldn't. Someone said this really, I can't remember who it was now. It's one of those things that just landed with me. If you want to have a multi-million-pound business, you have to behave like a multi-million-pound business owner now. Yeah. So get your boundaries in place. You wouldn't be having online spats. You wouldn't be responding to every single comment. You just rise above it. And I really took that on board. And certainly this last year, I've softened so much. I've become much less defensive, much more empathetic, much more just caring about the collective rather than I need to do this for me and my children. You know, I've got to that point of safety where my oxygen mask is now on, and I can look and I can help, and I can do bigger and better and more impactful things.
So episode 7, we had Zach Spuckler. And one of the things I really loved about Zach's interview was he shared loads of little great golden nuggets, but I think stop worrying about other people's judgments was a huge takeaway from his interview. And I want to just share this clip with you from Zach. I think there's a thing in the industry where it lulls you into like, sure, you can do this. And yeah, the truth is, sure, you can do this, but are you ready as a human to do this? Because, you know, there is certain things that you have to be willing to learn and do. And I think the biggest for me anyway, on a mindset perspective, was I literally had to get out of my own way. And I don't know if that's something that you've experienced.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think, you know, the biggest thing is that people have this perception, I think, that entrepreneurs are like, I'm doing it and I'm committed and this is perfect and I feel great about it. But I would be lying if I didn't say that there are times where I'm like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that, or maybe I shouldn't have posted that, or what are people going to think? Or like, you know, the like yesterday, I actually posted in my private group and on Instagram, I was like, I've only posted on Instagram 25 times in the last year. And I have a friend of mine who likes to say, like, why are people being judged by how frequently or consistently they post on social media? There's plenty of people making decent money. And I shared my revenue number for the year, and I was like, and I did it in the moment, totally fine, felt good about it. And then at night I was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Maybe people are judging. Maybe that's not enough revenue for people in the group. Maybe it's too much revenue for people in the group. Maybe I shouldn't have said anything. Maybe people are going to think it's gloating. Maybe people are going to think this. Maybe people are going to think that. And it's like, you know, you have to just be okay with it, right? And, you know, full transparency, there's times where I've written a post, been like, this is great, we get great interaction. And then I go, I don't know. And then I hide it, right, on my own timeline. And that's me getting in my own way. It has nothing to do with other people. It's a
mindset game all the way through. It is a mindset game.
And I love that you call it a game, because we think you can, like, you can't, it's a game you can't win, right? And that's where I think people get hung up, is like, when I do this, then it'll be perfect. When I do that, then it'll be perfect. And that for me was the biggest.
I love that you brought this up.
Is you will never get to a point where anything is perfect, what you want. Like, I remember my first year in business, I thought, okay, when I hit 6 figures, I'm going to quit my job. It's going to be amazing. I'm going to feel great. I hit 6 figures and I was like, the first thing I'm going to do is treat myself. I used to be a real sneakerhead, which translation, it just means you like to buy sneakers.
Or if you're in the UK, trainers.
Yes. So I used to buy a lot of trainers in like really bright colors, over the top. Absolutely love them. I still have about 15 pairs, but I really downsized from like 50. But I really love
almost like camping.
Yeah.
You're slumming it with 15.
I know. So but I was like, when I hit 100,000, I'm going to pay retail. I used to always buy my sneakers on sale. I'd eye them up, wait for them to go on sale, scoop them up. And I was like, I'm going to pay retail for a really nice pair of shoes, which can be like $150, right? And I bought it. I went to my car, and then I just started crying because I was like, this doesn't feel any different than it did 20 minutes ago. This is the same feeling. I'm the same person. Nothing has changed. And to me, that was like the big aha moment for my mindset journey, was like, you'll never, a lot of times you're like, when I blank, then I'll blank. And it's like, no, you have to be what you want to be, or experience the world the way you want to experience it, or you're never going to feel that way. And so for me, it's like finding joy in little things, you know, starting the candle company. Or I'd be lying if I said I'm not a shopper. I do like to shop. I've gotten better at it. I'm not using it as like this filling the void thing, but I'll be like, hey, I did well. I'm going to treat myself. It doesn't make me a better, worse person. It's just exciting to buy something new. get that little hit of dopamine and move on. But I'm not like, when I hit 300K, then I'll buy this and that's going to make me feel fulfilled. It's more like, hey, when I hit 300K, I'm going to buy this thing because I want this thing. I'm going to enjoy it. It's going to be fun. And it doesn't say anything about who I am as a person. It doesn't say anything about who people who can't buy these things are as a person. It's just a thing.
My next guest was the effervescent Jana Kingsford. And it was such a fun interview. I think we probably could have talked till the sun came back up. So it was such a great interview. It was so much fun. But one of my biggest takeaways from this interview was the tools and strategies you use in failure with money are the tools you use to succeed with money 100%. So what you learn from your failures is what's going to help you build your wealth. I love this. And this clip here is Jana in action. So check it out. I love this because we do the same thing with money, right? Like this is why I love money, because I'm so fascinated by it, because we really, I mean, I really honestly don't think that there is a better spiritual teacher on this planet right now than money. Money is like the most epic spiritual teacher, because like we attach so much stuff to it. Let's really look at what money is. Rounds of metal and bits of paper. And you've made it mean so much, right? And it's like, it's rounds of metal and bits of paper. None of us actually even want money. What we want is what we can buy with it, what we can do with it. What we want is an intangible feeling. I get people who say, yeah, well, I want money. And I say, okay, well, why do you want money? I'm like, surely you don't want rounds of metal and bits of paper, right? So what is it that you want? And it stops everybody in their tracks, and they go, I want security. Well, security is not money. It's a feeling. It's a feeling that money can sometimes give you, but you can get all the money in the world and still, like, the money would actually amplify your lack of security, right? So now you're like a millionaire and you're like, oh my God, they're going to steal my kids. They're going to legit, like, there's going to be a ransom, and your lack of security is just going to be amplified because money is an expander, right? It was, and then now you're disappointed at money because money didn't give you the security. And I'm like, no, but the security should come from you.
I love this so much. This is what happens. It's like, if I'm walking women through, we're doing it daily on the work. We're doing a daily money quest at the moment for 2021. And every single day they're getting these beliefs about money. And whatever level you're at, just times it by 10. So when you do have the money, just times it by 10. So whatever you're wanting, you're getting advanced screening of fear that you're going to have with the money. So you're getting like an advanced screening of the preview of the movie. And if you can't sort it there, you can't sort it where you're at, you're not going to be sorted when it's times 10. The tools that you use in the failure with money are the tools you need in success with money, because it's the same. I'm like, whoa, I've been here before. Like, whoa, this is like exactly the same. And I need the gratitude, and I need this tool, and I need the engaged enthusiasm. I need it all. The same tools that I used when I was failing with money, I need for success with the money.
Okay, so let me recap this for everybody who's listening, for the people in the back. This needs to be said again. Right, so wherever you are right now with money, times it by 10, like how you're feeling, the fears, right, will be times by 10 when you have money. So if you can't deal with it now, like deal with the fear while it's probably at a manageable level, even though you're freaking out right now. Can you imagine what you're going to be like at 10 times that level? And it's not the money's fault. It is our beliefs. I love this, Jana. I think you've just dropped like liquid gold here, because it is so true, right? Because it's like, this is it. Money is an expander. And, if you don't trust yourself now, what's it going to be like with times 10, right? Now you're freaking out because you got money. Now you're freaking out because you're not got money, but then times it by 10 and now you've got money. Now you're like really freaking out.
It's like whatever is Yeah, times it by 10, because if you can't handle it now, it'll be times 10. And the universe is just protecting you from having it, because if you can't go through that training ground, they're not sending you off to camp.
Yeah.
They're just like, well, let's just keep her there until she figures it out. And if she figures it out, then we'll send her off to camp. But she's still going to need everything she learnt at training camp to go out there in the wild, wild west. She's going to need everything.
My next guest was my beautiful client, Laura Muirhead. I have had the great pleasure to work with Laura now for over a couple of years. We've seen so many changes and so many expansions in her life during that time. And Laura is a CFO of a multi-million-dollar company. She is also an artist, healer, and sage. And so I'm really excited to do this interview. And I loved one of the tips that Laura shared, which was the words you use and the stories you tell can have such an impact on your abundance. And this is something that we've definitely discovered in the journey with Laura, but also as well, this is something that's so true in my own life. And I see it played out again and again with clients, people coming into my world, changing their stories, and abundance coming in. So here is Laura's clip. I know it's just going to really, really hit home for you. In your own healing journey that you've been on, literally healing yourself, like the abundance is literally like the side effect of the healing. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. The change in energy, it just really, I mean, the words that you use, the work that anybody can do on, letting go of old stories and releasing these things and just shifting I want to say shifting attitudes, but when you shift your attitude, you're really shifting your energy. And, opening up, the idea of one of, some of my favorite affirmations. I mean, one of the most simple affirmations that I like is everything's always working out for me, because it is. And then when you go a little deeper, I love the I'm open to unlimited abundance, and I'm open to infinite possibilities, because you just don't know what, and I personally experienced those things, like infinite possibilities. Oh, here, win the lottery, and that was before I, knew how to work energy in a good
energy.
Yeah. Work with the energy and do these things. But I think there's so many people even now, and I know a lot of people are having unfortunate situations, and I'm not going to diminish that. But for me, people are like, oh, how's that working out with you opening a business, right when everything shut down? Well, for me, it worked out because everything's always working out for me.
My next guest was the gorgeous Lynne Taggart. And Lynne shared with us lots of beautiful nuggets. And I really enjoyed seeing Lynne's rise online. And I've been following Lynne for a while now. And what's been really wonderful is for her to really live. She really lives, walks her talk. So in this interview, she really talked about the inner work that is required before you can receive the abundance. So the inner work that's really required. And this is Lynne's clip. I, like you, love to work in the realms of what other people might even call magic. I love to work with people's, with really alignment and lining them into this thing. And for me, it is about complete wealth. It is the wealth in the physical world, which is awesome because that gives you freedom and choice within your physical reality. But it's also a deep spiritual wealth that gives you the deep spiritual fulfillment in life, which was so lacking when I had my shops, and by the signs of it, was lacking when you had your shops. So tell us a little bit about your work just now. Obviously, mindset, intuition, all the things feature massively. How important would you say mindset and intuition is to happiness and fulfillment?
So my journey, I just want to touch on this because my journey started with money mindset. The course that I went into was a coaching course, which I didn't really hear. I just heard money mindset and I was like, oh, what is this? I want a slice of this cake. Tell me more. So I really dived into money mindset work and mindset work, which was really powerful in the beginning. But I personally had to take it to a deeper level because there was already something within me that resonated on a deeper level. So it was kind of like I started up here and then went more into the heart and then went more into the body, which then became the energy field, the emotional field, the spiritual realm. It all just kind of clicked into place for me because I didn't have what you had in my 20s at all. I literally was in my 30s by the time I was doing any of this work. But at the same time, it felt like it'd been there from a very, very young age, from the age of 3, when I, you know, kind of reflect back on some of the happenings and things. And I truthfully encourage women to, yeah, the mindset work is great, but what if we go deeper? So yeah, you have your intuition and that is really powerful, but a lot of people are so busy, especially in the business world, where they're doing the business things online, they're trying to make it work, they're checking all the boxes, but they're not able to access their intuition because of that busyness.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I get people at the point where they're ready for another level, but they also recognize that they can't physically take any more on and something has to shift. And it's not a matter of doing something else or having another strategy or something outside of themselves. It's something within them that needs to be clicked into place. It's that deeper inner well of source energy that they are actually craving. Because what I find is they hit the big goal, they have the big money month, they do it again, and still there is an underlying something, an underlying vibration or an emotion that's telling them, hey, come over here and take a look at this because you're still not happy having achieved this huge goal. So something's off. What could be off? And that's where they come to me, and I don't tell them what is off. I guide them into their own knowing and their own source energy, that they can receive it for themselves.
Yes.
Even if I already know, because it's up to me. I really feel like I have stepped into this earthly role to assist women to see through the eyes of source energy their own wholeness and their own truth from a place deep within, not from you're missing something or you'd be better doing this or this might work because it worked for me, but really letting them exceed. It's what you talked about earlier, where you tapped into your expanded version as the wealthy woman and all the things that were already there created for you and bringing that into the material world. Women are very good at that. They're very good at their desires and they're very good at calling in the material things. But when the material things don't fill the emotion that still hasn't been addressed, it's like, right, we've got to plug that. We've got to really help you to connect with your integrity or your truth or your worthiness or whatever it is, so that you can receive it in a high vibration and not then be fire hosing the situation after. And then there's the other type of woman who has all the wealth and she has all the money in the world, and money is not the issue and material things are not the issue, but what she's missing is her own inner connection. And it's because she hasn't been exposed to the online world or the self-development world, and she wants to fast track. She doesn't want to do the path that I've done because that would take her, you know, a few years or a few hot minutes, but she wants to come in and get what she needs to connect back into who she is, because her identity on some level is broken or it's just not whole and she can't connect with that.
And then we had the gorgeous Suzy Ashworth, and there was a lot of things on Suzy's podcast interview that I really loved, like lots of little golden nuggets. And I feel like one of the biggest takeaways that I took away from that interview was allowing yourself to receive way more than you need and giving from overflow. And this is the clip that has that in it. So tell us a little bit more about making that huge shift of going from flights on credit cards to like, we're flying home in class, people, and bringing your whole family home in that business class. And what has, you know, and going through that spiritual awakening and deepening of your message, deepening of everything, and reaching 7 figures in your business. What was the big shifts for you during that time?
I think that one of the things was permission to be in overflow. And so up until that point in my business, so I've essentially doubled my business year on year for 4 years. And in the 5th year, we hit 420,000. And the 4th year, we were at 469,000. And so there was a plateau. And that's turnover. And what was interesting is that I was very good at receiving money, but I wasn't good at being in overflow. And it's interesting, I deliberately use that word overflow as opposed to keeping it, because I believe that in order to allow more in, being good at allowing the money to flow through the system is really important. It's a cycle. So it's ebbs and flows, it's give and receive. And I was good at receiving, but I was still living in the mentality of we only ever have just enough. That is what I grew up with. I had a really beautiful childhood, but we only ever had just enough. My parents worked very, very hard, and it's like, we can get it, we will get what we need, just. And so it didn't matter how much money was coming in, there was still always only just enough left to like cover all of the outgoings. So there was a big shift in making the decision that I was available for overflow.
I love that. For me, that became a conscious decision as well. And I think when you have grown up in what I call lack consciousness, where everyone around you, and you're coding for that lack consciousness over and over again by repeating the patterns of your parents and everything. And it was like, it was okay to have enough, but how very dare you have more than enough, right? And giving ourselves that permission to have that overflow. And I love that you call it overflow, because, you know, this is one of the elements of this is that I talk in the community, I talk about the energetic fill level. You know, what would actually fill your container so that you have more than, you know, that you have enough to cover everything, because it depends where you fall in the camp. Either you're covering your bills at the moment, or you're not covering your bills at the moment. If you're not covering your bills at the moment, your energetic fill level is your first goal. After you've got there, it's about creating the surplus. But what we hoard stagnates. If we're hoarding the money, then the money stagnates, and it needs to flow to keep fresh energy moving and to keep the energy super fresh. And so I love that you call it overflow, because that's exactly what it is. So giving that permission to have overflow. Next up is the amazing Melanie Anlayer, one of my mentors, and she talked about a lot of different things, loads of really good stuff, how she went from sleeping homeless in her car to having a 8-figure business, which is absolutely incredible. So Melanie talks about taking radical self-responsibility and moving into your feminine energy. And this is something that I really, really teach, is taking radical self-responsibility, because the only big changes that we're going to be able to make is if we take that radical self-responsibility. And Melanie really, really embodies this, and here is her clip.
So right now, my company is called Alpha Femme, and it's about the woman who leads herself, the woman who's capable of taking radical self-responsibility in her life for all things and really just move forward in all areas that matter to her. And my programs that I offer have a very wide range, from personal empowerment to money, to business, to leadership, to social media and sales. So it really ranges. There's a large span of knowledge, but what's beautiful is it always gets brought back to this personal power concept and how we lead ourselves through it at every step of the way. So these concepts I embody in my life, and I walk with my clients to hold that calibration portal so they always are reminded of what's possible for them. And we raise the bar collectively over and over again every day.
I love that it's all about leading yourself, because that's a big premise in the $1 Million Experiment, is to lead yourself. It's a self-led experiment. We give you the mindset, we give you intuition, we give them what I have nicknamed the millionaire marinade with all these extraordinary people on our podcast and everything. But the whole idea is that we lead ourselves through the process, because I really think that if you need to be handheld through the process, then the minute that that hand isn't there anymore to lead you or hold you, you can't do it for yourself. And it's all about being able to be the one that can do it for themselves, which I think is so important. And I love that that is literally the center ethos of your brand, because it's you know, we can see why Melanie makes $1 million months, because it's not a case of you know, it's not a surprise if we're leading ourselves, right, from
Exactly.
these things. But that wasn't always the case. So
No.
take us back through the sands of time of right back. I know you're probably tired of telling this story because it's so not your life now, but tell us a little bit about where you're at.
So I think the reason I'm so passionate about this work now is because I really saw what it looks like without it. I saw what my life looks like without this. And it's just the saddest thing.
Yeah.
It's like we walk with potential every day of our lives, of what life could be, this never ending field of potential. But at the end of the day, we're going to create what we call in. And when we call in what we believe is possible for us and what we believe is available to us. And my journey begins in a place where I believed that nothing was available for me. I believed I was never going to find love. I believed that I'd wrecked my only chance at a relationship, and it was the worst relationship, but I regretted leaving it, even though I hated it. I thought my family was disconnected from me and I'd never have a family that worked. I thought I didn't know what I was going to be when I grew up. I didn't finish high school. I figured I'd never have a career that meant anything. I figured I'd never have money. I figured I'd struggle my whole life. I figured I'd never travel. I figured I'd never have real friends. I figured the things I thought about my life were awful, and they led me to a life that was the exact evidence of everything I thought and feared. I led myself right to what I believed was possible for me. And at the worst of it, I'd broken up with this guy. I had been with him for 7 years on and off, knowing it was the wrong guy, not having the power to leave. He cheated, he lied, he'd done everything. I couldn't leave. And when I finally left him, he fired me from my job because I'd helped him become the manager at my job. He fired me. I had to work 200 kilometers outside of my hometown. Ran out of money, couldn't pay for the hotel room, ended up having to sleep rough in my car, at odds with my family, didn't feel like I could talk to them. I'd go so long without speaking to them, even when I was with this guy, because they didn't think I should be with him, and fighting about that. And so when everything went rough, I didn't feel like I could say anything. So I just kept it all to myself, sleeping in my car, no food, freezing cold in the wintertime, living off just enough gas to not freeze to death. And my whole life just crumbled. And I got to be right about everything. That I was alone, that nobody cared about me, that I sucked, that I was worthless, that I had no money, that my life was going to be garbage. Like, I got to be right about all of it. And in that moment, it was like everybody else's fault, because one of the things about me that I did, even though I believed I was worthy of nothing, is I wanted to be the good girl. I wanted to be nice. So I did things to please everybody, and it never really gave me what I wanted. So I was always feeling bitter, resentful, and overgiving all at the same time. It was just poison. My life was it was mediocre at best and just terrible at its worst. And that's where the journey starts.
And what wrapped up our first quarter in the $1 Million Lab series was the wonderful Rebecca Robertson. Rebecca Robertson is a licensed financial advisor and planner. I was trying to get that right there in my head. Rebecca shared some really straight talking advice, some really boots on the ground advice, which I really, really appreciated. And I felt like this really brought this absolutely incredible season that we have had of guests on the $1 Million podcast. what I really appreciated about Rebecca's interview was just how raw and honest she was, but also as well, she really gave us her step-by-step process as well. So in this interview, she talked a lot about using your wealth to make an impact in the world. And here is her clip. So this is one of the reasons why I can literally discuss money till the cows come home, because there is so many layers. It's such a juicy onion and it's so many multi-layers. But, you know, and I really agree with I think the negative emotional connection, we absolutely, like all the stories that we have, like it's crass, we're a bad person for wanting it. I think there's so much shame around money for many people. And that's actually what's preventing them from making more money. Because the shame is literally, if imagine you're driving the money car and you've got one foot on the gas, really gunning it, right? So you're going and you're making money and it's great. But then the other foot ends up on the brake because you feel shame, because you feel like, oh, but people are going to, if I talk about money, people are going to think I'm crass. Or if I, you know, like if I mention how much I've made and not actually celebrate that, like a celebration, you know, if we get promotion at work, we sell, you know, like if you got a regular job and you get a promotion, you put it on your Facebook and celebrate, and everyone's like, woohoo. As an entrepreneur, your promotion is every time you hit a new income level. And yet there's so many entrepreneurs that really, really struggle, and I myself included, to say, listen, I've hit this new income goal and this next income goal, and I've had to really push myself out of the comfort zone. And I really agree with, we've got to detangle the negative connotations and connect with money in a more positive way, because you're right. For me, what money equals is freedom of choice. When you have more choices in this world, and aka money opens so many doors to that, you basically can do more things and you can help more people and you can be the person that you really, really want to be. When your resources in this world are limited, you have less choice. So you're going to have a limited, you know, ability to be the person that you want to be. And that's a big thing for me, because we talk a lot in the $1 Million Experiment about being a conscious millionaire, a millionaire that is awake in the world, that is making good choices with their money and voting with their money. Because that was another thing that growing up, my mom was like a little bit of an activist growing up, and she was all for like voting with her money. So her activism was very much household activism. So like we were not allowed to buy things from South Africa because especially from companies that supported an apartheid. We, you know, weren't allowed to, there were certain brands that were like, no, they support bad business practices. So this is like, my mum was definitely like a household activist. And I think this is, you know, the more women that are empowered around money, the more activism we can actually even do with our money, even if it is just choosing not to buy a brand that is supporting bad or unethical ways to work in this world. And of course, with more money, you get a choice. So you can buy more ethical products that sometimes tend to be a little bit more, but you can vote with your money that way too, which is really cool.
Yeah,
so
and that's
tell
a
us
point. So because you could actually invest ethically as well.
Exactly.
And so you can take the money that you are making to invest, and actually you can do that in a way of, okay, I'm going to get returns and hope, you know, it should be sort of well invested. But you can even go to the next point of going, no, I only want to invest in businesses that are impactful and are having an impact in the world.
Yes,
so that
I
with
love
more
that.
money, you have more choice. And by putting on your oxygen mask yourself, looking after yourself more first and creating that wealth first, then you've actually got more opportunity to have a legacy and give back and create so much more freedom for yourself. Whereas what I see happening quite a lot is that women are doing things for free, they're sort of helping their community, which is all lovely things to do. But I then see them 10, 20 years later and they're in a situation where, you know, they're not in a financial position that they can make their own decisions. Whereas if we just flip it the other way round and go, look, you know, earn the money that you need to earn, whether that's 10 grand a year or 10 grand a month, whatever it is that you need, get to, and there's no judgment, right? And as to which figure that is. And that's the other thing, there's a huge amount of judgment around money. Once we get rid of those thoughts and processes, and we stop judging each other and judging ourselves, we just focus on what the ultimate goal is, achieve that, then we can start to have more excess and be able to give back more, invest more, and multiply more. And I truly believe that then we will have a more rounded society, and actually the wealth gap that we're seeing at the moment, where the rich are getting richer and the poorer are getting poorer, by women being empowered with their finances, I honestly believe that is the answer to reduce that wealth gap and actually allow society as a whole to live more equally.
I hope you guys have really enjoyed our little trip down memory lane and really enjoyed this recap episode of all the amazing guests that we've had on the Into the LightWeb podcast in my $1 Million Lab series. And of course, this series continues, and we'll be back next week with a brand new guest and episode. So I'm so looking forward to catching you. And in a few weeks' time, we also have some really special guests coming up as well. So I'm really excited by that too, some celebrity guests coming up. So I hope that you will keep tuned in watching. Make sure you subscribe. If you're watching this on YouTube or iTunes or Spotify, make sure you hit that subscribe button and follow us, and do leave us a comment or a review. It really helps to get other people to see our episodes and programs out there. I will speak to you soon. Bye.